we
Okay.
are. Okay, we
We're
are
good?
Okay.
live, and yeah, got them muted. Because their sound was playing through. There we go. Okay, hey guys.
Are we live?
We are live. This is us.
Oh yeah, I'm Sheree.
I'm Chris.
And we're Technomadia.
And our guests, this is the first time we're doing a Skype call-in with remote guests, and so this is a
trial for us.
A trial for us. We did a rehearsal, and then there was some glitches on their end with their Skype audio, so they didn't quite know sign language. There's, I guess, the universal sign of drop the anchor or up the anchor, but yeah.
So anyway, welcome to tonight's broadcast. We just found out that, like, just a few days ago, that today is National Hug and Anchor Day. And our friends Chris and Alyse of Ask Captain Chris suggested that we might do a joint video together. So let's go ahead and cue them in.
Okay, let's make sure. See, there they are.
Okay, hey. You're gonna have to move some.
Hey, good evening, guys.
Cool. Okay, guys, and let me make sure they are. You guys say something and make sure we can hear you.
Happy Hug and Anchor Day.
So, no. Yeah, the sound was there. Now I got to turn this up so I can hear them. Yeah, there. Okay, you guys, I hear you.
Okay, all right.
Perfect. There we are.
Echo. Now, is ours going to echo?
It shouldn't. No, now you guys have to turn down your YouTube. If you're watching YouTube there.
Yep, turn off your YouTube.
Okay.
We don't have YouTube on.
No, is it our YouTube? Wait, there's something else playing sound? Yes. Okay.
Okay, boom. Chris, it's you.
Yes. No. We had a YouTube window because we were testing over there. Okay. There now.
We are professionals, aren't we? Okay.
This is why professionals actually have
a producer
who is paying attention to all these things.
See, that's what we're counting on you for, right?
No. They're all furloughed, so it's just us. No makeup. Just us.
Oh, that's awful. Yes.
So anyway, meet Captain Chris and Captain Alyse. They run the YouTube channel Ask Captain Chris, the website, and these guys we did their in-house training. There are 2 weekends with them. We spent with them in classrooms. Well, we were learning all about boats because we basically went from an inflatable kayak to a 47-foot motor yacht.
Yes.
Pretty big.
Yeah. So how did we first hear about Captain Chris? It was from Sean and Louise, wasn't it?
Yeah, our friends Sean and Louise of our Odyssey, who are currently anchored off Staniel Key in the Bahamas, not able to get ashore to get groceries this weekend. They were also trained by Chris and Alyse, and big friends with them, and that's kind of led to us meeting them and deciding, hey, they're the ones for us too.
Hey.
And I think the first time that we met you was at a Looperpalooza.
That is
over in Fort Myers.
Right. That's back when we were before we bought our boat, right?
Yeah, like a week before.
Yeah, right before we got our boat at the Looperpalooza. We were still sucking in knowledge, and our boat broker actually sent us. It's like, you guys need some training. I'm gonna comp you. I'm gonna pay for you to go see Captain Chris, and so we got to do 2 of your weekend classes thanks to him.
Wonderful. Wow. It's been fun following along and seeing how far you guys have progressed. Not distance-wise,
but I think we're less than 60
how far
miles
experience-wise you've gotten. Yes. So today's Hug and Anchor Day, and really it's about hugging an anchor on TV, but we hijacked that that it'll be, your anchor that you use on your boat, and hopefully after today, some people will be maybe a little bit less hesitant to use that anchor and more excited about anchoring instead of going into marinas.
And I'm actually thinking if you would try to hug a TV news anchor today, they would probably arrest you for assault. So, yes, that'd be violating social distancing.
So we're talking about hugging a big metal hunk that keeps your boat secure to the bottom of water. So first of all, tell us a little bit about you guys. When did you start cruising? Because I know you guys cruised for a very long time before you got a sticks and bricks and started teaching.
Well, we typical, got married, bought a house, got a little boat, got a bigger boat, got a bigger boat, got a bigger boat. And even the 34-foot boat was too small, so we got a 44-foot boat. And then we sold our house and moved aboard the boat with our 2 Labrador retrievers, and that was 1995.
And we came from 2 completely different kinds of boating backgrounds. I was a boat rider, I would go on the boat as the baby of the family and be told, sit there, don't move, and don't touch anything. Whereas Chris grew up literally on boats. And at 18, he had his captain's license and was working commercially. So when we did get together, it wasn't quite that easy in that I really came from not a whole lot of knowledge other than it was fun. And so long as it was fun, I was in. No problem. But the more we were together and the more we were boating and the more experiences we had, I realized, ooh, I need to learn a lot more than just do what he tells me to do kind of thing in order for it to stay being fun. And that's where I'm sure you guys have experienced some of that. The more you understand about what's happening, the less fearful it is and the more fun and the more enjoyable a time it can be. And boy, I'll tell you what, I think you that are, I mean, it's an awful situation that we're in right now where we have to be sheltering at home. But those of you who your home is your boat, I envy you right now because it is the most relaxing. It is so, I don't know, you're surrounded by nature and
your house moves.
That's wonderful to be able to sleep on a boat, you know, where you're rolling just a little bit, that gentle, just love it. So good for you guys.
So how long did you guys cruise full time?
Well, in the year 2000, I was 45. Sorry to divulge that, but
I'm 45 yet. Because I was only 39. And I'm staying with that. I was only 39 when we left.
We're living on our boat in the marina, like you're living on your boat in a marina right now. But we were still doing our corporate jobs. We both wore suits. We both did the 60 hours a week routine. And when we would get home to the boat, of course, we'd have to take the dogs on shore patrol. But we're thinking, what else is there to life? So after thinking and thinking and thinking, we just figured, let's see if we can take a 1-year leave of absence from our careers. And fortunately, we were both able to do that. So in the year 2000, we started out on a 1-year cruise, not a 3-month cruise like you see on TV, but a 1-year cruise. So May 1st, we took off. And by January 1st, we were in Key Weird. And we were thinking, we've got 5 months to go back to the world.
Didn't want to do it.
Didn't want to do it. So we called her boss at the hospital and ruined her holiday.
And what we also learned is that the more comfortable you get with your boat and the more you can do yourself, and, you know, anchoring is fun, but it's also economical. It didn't cost as much to cruise that first year as we thought it was going to. So we said, well, let's just do it 1 more year. And 1 more year came and we said, oh, you know, we picked up a few odd jobs. I had gotten my captain's license in the meantime. And we just kept going a little bit more. And when we finally said, we're going back, that's it. We really need to get back into the corporate world again. And we had plane tickets in our hand to land in New Orleans the day after Katrina had just hit New Orleans. So there was no airport left. It was a MASH unit. And we said, well, what are we going to do now? So we went to the Bahamas for a few more months. And we just kind of figured out that with the kind of jobs that we had been picking up here and there with the deliveries and the occasional maintenance on somebody's boat and such, we said, we can do a business of this. And it has totally morphed into strictly the education part of it. But even a couple of days ago, you did a delivery to move somebody's boat because they had to go back to their home state and then they wanted their boat hauled for the summer. So we did that for them. But
and note, that was the last day before curfew in Florida. So we did not break any laws or rules. Yeah. But one thing for all of our boating friends, and understand we've got 2 audiences. We've got the RV audience and we've got the boat audience. But I had to take the lock on the Okeechobee Waterway in Stewart, and I was the second boat, and they closed the doors. And I turned around, and there were 2 more boats behind us, 2 40-footers behind us, and I didn't know why the lockmaster told them to wait. And it was strange because we could fit about 8 boats in the lock, but we only had 2. Later, I learned that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is only locking 2 boats per time and a maximum of 10 persons aboard each boat. and the boats have to be spaced more than 50 feet away.
Which is why the two boats dock. So, being boaters, you have to be adaptable. You guys had your chat last week where you shared with us the things that you had to do in order to get back to your boat and get down to Sanford. And I know it killed you to do those long days because you don't normally travel quite so many miles in a day. But, you have to adapt. And it's really, the more you get comfortable with your boat, the easier I think it is to adapt on the boat.
Absolutely. It was kind of frightening first because we had just gotten it off the hard after being stored for 6 months. And we were like, wait a minute, we haven't really gotten back into the groove yet of cruising, and now we're suddenly doing this massive repositioning. But we did well with it. But we were originally, getting back to the topic of our anchors, we were originally going to set out and just do a lot of anchoring out for the next couple months ahead.
Right. Yeah, we were thinking we were going to be out. We actually bought a water maker so we wouldn't need hardly any excuse to go to shore. We've had months of provisions. We could make our own water. We were going to try doing our first time going out to sea to dump. And we were excited about the anchoring out possibilities.
Extended. But then when this COVID thing started to look like it's really going to be going on into summer, then we're going to be in hurricane season.
Yes.
Marinas are shutting down. We might as well we're going to want to be somewhere safer for hurricane season. So we better go ahead and get our slip now while we can. So we're not doing the anchoring out that we wanted to, but we did some coming down the coast, and it was so magical. What percentage of your cruising do you think you guys did anchoring versus living out of marinas?
A lot of anchoring. We fell into the Snowbird routine where we would zip back and forth at 7 knots from the Chesapeake Bay, usually in Baltimore. We would summer in Baltimore and drive the waterway taxis in Baltimore. And then we would zip at 7 knots back to the Keys and spend the winter in the Keys.
In 21 travel days, and not one day in a marina. We go from the Keys, where if we were going to be working, we would take a marina. Otherwise, we would anchor. So we would go from the Keys up to Baltimore, where we were going to work. So we took a marina up there, but we would every night stop someplace to anchor. And that was at that point, we were only traveling with one dog. We had one lab, but we had to take him ashore twice a day. Yeah. Well, sometimes I went.
Okay.
And on occasion, what we would do is, because we didn't have a water maker, but we held 500 gallons. So that's a whole nother discussion.
Pretty much the same thing.
That's a lot. So what we would do is we would stop maybe one time, sometimes 2 times in the middle of the day. We would stop someplace. During those 21 days, we would stop in the middle of the day, one place, and say, okay, we're going to take on 100 gallons of fuel and do a pump out, and then take on some water and maybe mail some letters or anything like that we had to do. But we do that in the middle of the day, because when do people always fuel up? At the beginning of the day or at the end of the day? So in the middle of the day, they were perfectly happy with us coming in, pulling up to the fuel dock, and then we'd go on for another couple of hours and anchor at a place that felt comfortable.
Nice. Very economical that way.
Yes. So for our RVing audience, anchoring is the boating equivalent of boondocking. So
dry camping.
Wet
camping, I guess.
So it's usually in not like a slip or a campsite. It's not designated. It's not numbered. And there's resources just like in RVing. We use Campendium and free campsites. We use resources like Waterway Guide and Active Captain to find anchorages. And what defines an anchorage is usually going to be a place that someone else has dropped an anchor before and reported it. Would you guys, that's pretty much what it is?
Well, I would say now it is. But when we left New Orleans, I didn't know what Waterway Guide was. Mm-hmm. We didn't have Active Captain.
We didn't have internet. We had AOL flash sessions,
wow,
if you remember that.
And somewhere along the way, maybe about 8 or 9 months into our trip, we met someone who had an old Skipper Bob book.
Okay.
Hey, guys.
And we said, what's this? And they said, this is a great place that'll tell you where to anchor. We said, oh, you need somebody to tell you where to anchor? Because we would look at what the weather forecast was going to be, what the wind was going to do, what kind of fetch an area would have, which fetch is the distance that a wave can come. And when it comes from a long distance with that wind blowing, it's a little bit more uncomfortable than if you have a very short fetch. And we would look at the depth of an area and how far off of the intercoastal it would be. And the really important thing for us to look for is, was there an RAMP nearby? A boat ramp,
right?
Because that would be a great place to take the dinghy ashore and bring the dog to do his shore patrol.
Dry.
Yeah, dry.
To be dry.
To have
But
a dry dog was important.
I'm not going to say that we were Christopher Columbus age, but we were doing it the old-fashioned way. We were looking at the paper chart. We were figuring out the weather, the wind blockages, the leeward, the windward, and we'd pick a place to anchor. So now the word is crowdsourcing.
Oh, yeah.
So you can buy the book, Skipper Bob's Anchor Guide, and all of the crowdsourcing is in there, and he can tell you where is a better place and why it's a better place to anchor.
And one of the cool things, one of the first things I remember that really stuck with me about the Skipper Bob book is that when we were coming through, oh goodness, what's the place right south of the crossroads?
Peck Lake.
Peck Lake. When we were going, people kept saying, you got to go to Peck Lake. And Skipper Bob says, go to Peck Lake. And we're looking at the charts. And the charts say that it's 2 and 3 feet. And we drew 4 feet. And we're saying, we can't go to Peck Lake. That's just too shallow for us. And they're saying, oh, no. We have a boat just like yours with the same draft. And we were able to go there. And it's no problem. It's at least 10 or 12 feet deep. Well, that's one of the good things about the crowdsourcing, the books, the online sources, et cetera, is that they'll tell you these things that the NOAA charts, unfortunately, still haven't reflected the change, that something's been dredged or that it's now an
change through other weather patterns or things like that. So yeah,
definitely
been a change.
Just
we've had
a
in
place
the RV world as well. As it used to be, we had to seek out our own boondocking spots or limited resources. But as time has gone by, more and more people are doing this. Crowdsourcing has become a way that RVers find boondocking spots and cruisers find their anchorage.
Yeah, the wisdom of everyone coming together is wonderful. It also does mean some of what used to be the hidden gems now become kind of overcrowded.
So one of the things that we really recommend to people is, first of all, if you're anchoring for the first time, don't do it for an overnight, because you want to make sure that you understand your gear and you feel comfortable with it and all that sort of stuff. But when you do decide you're going to go someplace for an overnight, that you pull in somewhere around 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
Get there first.
Because that gives you the time to scout out and see where you want to anchor and how much swing do you have and is it deep enough and all of those important things, and have the midges come.
And then you have time to have a backup plan. Go find a second anchorage if the first one doesn't work out for any reason.
And it also lets you experience a tidal shift, because that's something that certainly RVers don't have to think about. Is the current could be pulling you this way in an anchorage one part of the day, and 6 hours later you're being tugged that way, and everything is different.
Yeah. And so that's an excellent point. So first time boaters that plan to anchor overnight, we suggest that you find a good anchorage near your marina and go out there and anchor all day long, so you can clean the boat, you can watch, well, I was going to say football on TV, but that's not happening. Have lunch, take a nap, but you want to witness, like you said, the tide change. So that way, if you witness it in the daylight in a controlled environment where the weather's good, you can see, you can get a better sense. You can get a better, more comfortable feeling of what happens, because not only does the boat change directions, but the anchor will spin around also. So you want to make sure that the anchor sets in the first direction. Then as it spins around, it'll pop up out of the bottom and it will set again. So that comes into
That might be a good basic question to start with, is what does it mean to set an anchor, and what is the technique to do that?
Well,
we just toss it overboard, right?
You just put it down. If you're in 12 feet of water, you put it 12 feet down and you're done, right?
Yeah. Throw it. Don't forget, you throw it. I don't know about you, but I can't throw 40 or 50 pounds. It doesn't go far. So the first thing you want to do is lower it. Just lower, 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 lower. And as it's lowering, you start to back up. You start to go in reverse, to go away from it and play out some of this pain. And that is just a huge difference from when you've got somebody who's from a trailer boat to a larger boat, and they think that they have to throw this anchor. You don't even have to throw it in the trailer boat, but for some reason, trailer boaters tend to throw their anchor all the time.
Okay.
Well, let's go back to the beginning and think, how do you know if your anchor is set? We'll talk about the mechanics that Alyse explained, but it's like catching a fish. How do you know if the fish has swallowed? You can feel it. You can sense it. So that's the same thing. The anchor, the nickname for an anchor is a hook. Okay. Drop the hook, set the hook, whatever. So when you go into an anchorage, you will look at the weather conditions, look at the bottom conditions, muddy, rocky, sandy. You'll look at the best way to point your boat into the current, into the wind, and then you'll lower your anchor, and then you will deploy the anchor rode, R-O-D-E, rode, which is either all chain, all rope, or some chain and some rope. And then you will deploy it with a formula I'll explain in a moment. And then you will want to bury the anchor or set the hook like fishing. So the formula is simple. We can get into more details, but the simple formula is about 7 times the distance from the bow roller on the top of the boat, 7 times the distance from here all the way to the water bottom. So if it's 10 feet, I'm using simple round numbers. If it's 10 feet from the anchor roller to the bottom, 7 times would make 70 feet worth of road that you would put out. And that would give you a good angle to pull the anchor into the bottom. If the anchor does not set, if it doesn't bite, then let out more, let out more, let out more. And if you cannot set the anchor then you may have to recover everything and move to a different location and start all over.
Yep, that's pretty basic. That covers it really well.
It's a little bit more complicated than an RV of pull the parking brake. So
yes,
definitely,
I get it. Definitely is. And one other thing that we do is we put something called a bridle on the front of our boat, which is just some rope, basically some line going from the front cleat down from both sides of the boat, and then we have a hook that then brings that set point basically down to water level. So we're eliminating that 8 feet. Ours is bow roller to water is 8 feet. So it eliminates 8 feet that we have to calculate in for how much chain we have to lay out. And it also reduces the stress on the boat itself as the boat moves around.
Ratio that you have too.
Right.
Yes.
And
now
decreases our swing space.
The bridle that you're describing is actually a, let's call it a heavy duty bungee cord, because you do not want your boat connected directly to the anchor by 100% chain.
Right.
Because the chain in rough water can actually bend the shaft on your anchor windlass. Not only that, but your berth is in the forward part of the boat,
we hear it all night.
so it would be an uncomfortable night.
Yes.
So you would use the snubber of usually 3-stranded nylon rope, which is an elastic rope. Your boat's 47 feet, so I guess your bridle's 5/8 in diameter.
I think that's
the rope diameter.
I selected when I put ours together. Yeah.
It's in that neighborhood, 5/8 or maybe 3/4. So that gives you that stretching effect. So you're not going to have that herky-jerky feeling all night long.
Right, absolutely.
And another thought, turn your rudder straight when you anchor. Because when the current runs under the boat, if the rudders are turned, the boat will do this all night long.
Which sometimes is nice.
So turn your rudder straight.
Sometimes it's a nice feeling.
Well, that'd be a 1 beer night instead of 2.
Exactly. That's kind of like putting quarters in the massaging bed, if you want the swaying or not.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are some tips on anchoring. We love anchoring out. When we typically, the pattern that we've kind of developed over the years is we love monthly stays in different marinas and checking out a cool city as we go. So we'll go and we'll book a marina, because so many marinas are just in cool downtowns, walking distance to lots of great stuff, which is a difference from RVing, where usually RV parks are not near the cool stuff. So, but we'll spend maybe 2 or 3 weeks getting between our next stop. and we'll do a lot of extended anchoring out. We've got solar power. We've got a small generator. We can bring along about 180 gallons of water, which is plenty for us for 2 weeks. And then we just added on a water maker so we can extend that out. But we love it because when we're RVing, we love boondocking.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh, yes.
On the East Coast, when you're RVing, there's not many good boondocking spots. They're hard to find. But there are a heck of a lot of good anchoring spots on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's also kind of fun to stage yourself before you're going to go into a city where there's going to be a marina that you'll stay in for a while. It's kind of fun to stage yourself just right outside the city. There'll be places that are so remote and you think, how could this be? But on the water, pretty remote.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's amazing.
We would do something a little bit different than what you're doing because we were Snowbird routine from the north to the south, from the Keys to the Bahamas back up to the Chesapeake Bay. We would go to the Chesapeake and we would work for 3 or 4 months and pay to stay in a marina because we're working, we could afford it. Then we would go back down south and we wouldn't work and we wouldn't take a marina unless we had to or unless somebody offered us a job. I fell into a very good job in Marathon in the Florida Keys, 47.5. That's not a radio station.
It's very close for you guys.
That's right. You were at Birdine's. We were
right.
next door at
years apart.
Barra Blanco Ocean.
Yes.
I was driving a charter boat for a scuba school. So I was working 4 days a week, making 3 trips a day. Out to the reef, 2 scuba dives, back. Change crews, out to the reef, 2 scuba dives, back. And occasionally I'd have a night dive. So that's how we were able to afford our marina stays. But if we didn't want to spend the money on the marinas, then we would anchor. And that's what we're talking about today. Anchoring is economical. I don't want to say it's free because there's a cost associated with your generator.
Mm-hmm.
Our generator was 10 kilowatts. How big is your generator?
We've got a 6.5.
Just 6.
6, yeah.
6,
sorry,
yeah.
Yes, we downgraded to a 6. We had a
12.
We had a 12.5, and when it broke with the mechanic you guys actually recommended.
You filmed it.
We actually came and filmed our generator coming out. We went with a 6 kilowatt because we got the lithium batteries now, so we knew we can do the battery boosting off of those, and we can still do everything we need to do with that.
So you've got newer technology batteries and newer technology consumers like lights and everything.
Yes.
Our boat had the original 1980 batteries. Of course, they were replaced, but they were flooded wet cell batteries, and we had regular light bulbs.
I thought then they had oil lamps.
What?
You want me to slap them for you?
Whale oil lantern.
Well, I sent my harpoon into the Smithsonian. But the economies of anchoring out is how much do you run your generator. And when we went north to Baltimore, we worked up there in the summer, so we traveled up and back in the spring and the fall. Cool nights, no air conditioner required. And then we would winter in the Keys or in the Bahamas, cool nights, no air conditioner required, which means the generator's at very limited use. So the cost of anchoring is how much do you run your generator? Our generator would use 2 quarts of diesel fuel per hour. Mm-hmm. And we would have to do an oil change every 100 hours on the brand of generator that we had. So that was our cost for anchoring.
Nice.
It's very, very cheap compared to a marina.
Absolutely. And it's great. And, marina rates overnight are ridiculously expensive. They charge you by the foot, and you could easily be paying $100 to $200 a night just to dock your boat and plug in. Now, if you do monthly marina stays, they get so much more affordable. The one we're at right now, we're paying $550 a month plus electric. It's the cheapest we've ever been to. Yeah. But the most we've ever paid is $1,400 a month, and that was down in Miami. So it can be extremely affordable to dock a mansion boat like ours in really cool areas. So,
Well, marina rates are just like real estate, location, or events like the Super Bowl. So you're in Miami, but do you think you could get a marina during Super Bowl week this year? I doubt it.
I bet that if the pandemic's still going on, definitely.
Oh, no, they're actually closed now.
Yes,
They're
that's
not
right. Everything's
accepting
closed right now.
transients.
Yes.
So again, we're back to anchoring.
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, it's just a lot of folks right now who are moving because they were ending up their snowbird season in the Keys or Florida, and they're trying to get to their home port in the north or get above the Florida Georgia line where a lot of insurance policies require boats to be for hurricane season. So a lot of people right now are moving boats to get there before, well, they still can, well, marinas can still take them and anchoring out on the way because a lot of marinas are not doing transient stops right now.
Some places they won't take you in for the night, but they will let you fuel up and get water and pump out.
Yes.
But then you have to keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's good. It's good. That's another reason why the Waterway Guide and crowdsourcing is being very helpful to let everybody who's following after you know what to expect, who's open, who's not, what kind of services do they have. So that's been extremely helpful for the people that we've known that have been heading up the coast.
Yes,
and
Waterway Guide is doing a great job with that. In the RV world, we've got Campendium and Rootless Living and Our Village all doing similar things for RV parks, tracking closures and openings. So it's been a great resource on both sides. And speaking of that, just real quick, I just want to, if you go to the Escapees website, which is an RV site, escapees.com, they are doing, encouraging letter writing to mayors and governors and legislatures to, for us full-timers, to write and just express the importance of considering marinas and RV parks to be essential businesses for full-timers as our places of residence during hunkering down. We went and did a whole letter writing campaign the other night and added to that. So we definitely encourage that.
And it's working. Several state governors have actually, revised their rules saying, hey, okay, yeah, we get it now that, campgrounds and marinas where people are staying full time, we need to treat those like essential services. But there's a lot of others who still have no clue. So the letters definitely help.
Well, something I noticed when I went through the St. Lucie Lock Thursday before the curfew is on the east side of the lock where the big trailers or the motor coaches are, there were maybe 20 RVs there. On the west side of the lock where I think they have the primitive camping and the smaller trailers, empty. Nothing is there. So I don't know what the difference is in the smaller RV west side of the lock and the bigger RV.
I know the Army Corps of Engineers are kind of in a transition period. They're doing that regionally as to where they're closing those down right now or not. So, but yeah, we're seeing a lot of campground closures across the country. So we actually have a question for Captain Chris from Captain Sterling Kennedy. I don't know if you two know each other or not, but we've met him at an MTOA rendezvous. And he actually keeps his boat for hurricane season up here in Sanford. But he would like to know, what anchor do you like best all-around usage?
Because not all anchors are made the same.
The best anchor that we like, first of all, there's no one anchor does it all. But if there's anything that's close to that definition, it's the one that's on the bow of your boat.
No, you can't. No, just the only one ever on the entire planet is the one on the bow of my boat.
And you've got the micro size.
He's got the micro size.
That's his necklace version.
The ultra anchor.
Really micro size. That's what I got on here.
Oh, nice.
Yes, the ultra anchor is what we got. We've had it now 2.5 years, and we used to have an old Delta spade anchor that came with our boat. And we, after dragging a couple nights in the middle of the night with that thing, we decided, I don't care how much it costs, I want the best anchor our money can buy, and we went with the ultra. Because
anchoring, it gives you so much peace of mind that because you got to sleep and make sure you're in a safe place when you wake up in the morning. And a lot of boats have basically anchors that are lunchtime anchors, because not a lot of boaters spend the night out. They go out, they anchor for lunch or swimming or whatnot, and it is an important upgrade for anybody who's going to be anchoring out to get a better anchor, I think.
Well, when we left New Orleans, we had a Bruce.
Which is a mud anchor, a Bruce anchor. I just happen to have one here. Ooh. A Bruce anchor. See, there's no points on it. Think of it as a scooper or a spoon to scoop up ice cream or to scoop up the mud. And that's the purpose of a Bruce anchor, and it's a solid shank. So that's the anchor that we had. But when we came down to Florida and we have sandy bottoms, we then went to the Delta anchor, which is the anchor that you used to have. And the Delta anchor is a plow type anchor. You can see it looks like a farmer's plow, but it also has a lead wedge here. So it's a weight to make that go upright and then dig in. So this is good for sand, but it's not the best idea for mud because mud is slippery and slimy. You need a scooper. So the concave designed anchor has a lead weight and it's concaved or a spoon or scooper like. So this is a good sand anchor and a good mud anchor. And this is the Ultra brand, but there's equivalent brands like Vulcan that make something like this and Spade that makes something like this. So those are two comparable anchors to this design.
Before we stumbled on the Ultra, we had 6 different types of anchors aboard our boat at one time.
Wow.
Because we were traveling into different water bottoms. So we needed a sand anchor for here and a mud anchor for there and possibly for the rocks. And then we're going to be in a hurricane. So what are we going to do for that? You know, so there was, I'm sorry, can you hear the dogs barking?
No problem.
They're telling us that somebody's out there. So most boats don't have room for 6 anchors. That's just not a normal thing to expect you to carry. So that's why when we wanted to kind of slim down with stuff, this made more sense for the type of boating that we were going to do and that it would cover more water bottoms than your average anchor.
Right, so
were we able to give you more information than you asked for?
We'll come back to Debbie's because this is still like on the
okay, right.
Yeah,
so
yes.
What is the recommended size and weight and cost? And that's going to vary by the anchor type, and you're really best going to the anchor manufacturer's website or brochures because they'll have recommendations for your size of boat, your weight of boat, the height of your boat, how much windage it's going to have. Those are all factors that have to play into it. So there's no across the board what size and weight should you get because it's going to vary by your boat.
Well, to continue with that explanation, there's a lookup chart. So if you look at brand A, brand D, brand C, they'll say for X length of boat, let's say 45-foot boat, and you'll need this size anchor. The difficulty I have with that, and remember this, we're in a computer ordering society nowadays, but you need to talk to somebody at the factory that's an expert on that. If you've got a boat like yours, which is 47 feet, you've got some windage because of the big cabin on it, but you've got a planing hull, which means it's slippery or the water will slide right under it like you're hydroplaning or the current is going under the boat. Our boat was 4 feet, but we had a full displacement boat, so we had a big watermelon under the water. So our boat was a true trawler that had a lot of buoyancy in the hull design, but a lot of resistance in the water design. So we had like a shrimp trawler hull or a tugboat hull. So it's not the rule of thumb, but whatever the lookup chart said, you would elect to go one size larger in the anchor because we had more resistance against current.
And we decided we liked it because when the one that Ultra Anchor recommended for our boat, we were right on the line with the weight. We opted to go one size larger because
peace of mind.
We wanted the peace of mind. We wanted a storm anchor. We wanted something that we would feel safe at if we had one of the pop-up Florida storms come over or if we needed to anchor out in like a Cat 1 hurricane or something. So, you know, we wanted something that we would we'd hope to never have to do that, but we wanted to have something that we would at least feel we had a bit of a chance with.
Particularly like if we had to leave the boat behind and evacuate. We want the boat to hopefully, because that's one thing a lot of people do is they have to leave their boats anchored and flee for a hurricane.
Well, you've done that once already.
We left it to a dock that time. That was at Birdines. We left it tied up at Birdines.
Yes.
I did dock as well for a hurricane in a very narrow canal, but it was wide enough that we could spring ourselves out across the canal to another dock, and we put anchors on the bow and the stern. And those anchors did such a good job that when the storm was over with, Chris had to put the tanks on and dive on it to get that anchor to come back up.
Wow.
It was buried. It was buried.
And that was Wilma. So again, you were at Birdines in Marathon, and we were at next door at Farablanco Oceanside, but the marina was old and you could sneeze and it would fall down.
And it did fall
down in Irma.
Yeah. Right, it's not there anymore.
So we went back in Boot Key Harbor, Sisters Creek, Whiskey Creek, and we tied up in a dead-end canal.
Okay.
So we were back there for Wilma, and if anybody knows anything about hurricanes, we were in the eye.
So were we.
But we were aboard the boat.
Oh, that's scary.
See, yeah.
We were in Alabama. Our boat was
we were
in Alabama with Joe the computer guy.
Yeah.
And thank you, Joe, for providing links to the Escapees writing campaign. We appreciate that.
So let's bring up Debbie's question. We're starting to get some good questions coming in. If you want to ask Captain Chris about anchoring, this is your chance. So start queuing up some good stuff here.
You want me to go ahead and give the pitch for your offer while we've got people?
Sure.
Right, yeah. So Captain Chris, he has been doing free 15-minute consultations with their audience, and he has extended. He's going to do 10 of them. He's going to offer 10 private one-on-one phone calls. So you could ask Captain Chris questions. There is information in the description of this video with how to reach them on email. And basically at the close of this one, they'll take the first 10 who write in. And you can set up a time in the coming weeks to have a private one-on-one consult with these guys.
Yes, and it's so worth it. So ask Captain Chris because he's full of good stuff. Okay, now let's go to Debbie's question here. Ding. There we are. Debbie wants to know more about an anchor bridle. So could you talk more about why or when or how you would figure that out? Because that's
okay. The purpose of the anchor bridle is to prevent the chain from shocking the boat and shocking the drive shaft. You don't want to bend the drive shaft on the anchor windlass.
This is not an electrical shock.
So the first question is...
Not electrical shock, it's the physical shock, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Physical shock.
So what is your anchor rode made of? If it's 100% chain, then you want to use a snubber, which is a single nylon rope, or a bridle, which is two, kind of like a bridle riding a horse, and it'll go to the starboard cleat and the port cleat. So to answer your question, we need to know if you've got 100% chain or if it's partial chain and rope. If it's partial chain and rope, if you've got all of the chain overboard and then the rope is tied to the cleat on the bow of your boat, you do not need a snubber or a bridle because the anchor rope is the elastic stretching feature that you would have.
And you can secure that to your cleat on the bow of your boat rather than have it pulling on your windlass shaft, which could bend the shaft. And that's what he's talking about, the shocking on it. You don't want that to happen.
The dynamic shock force.
Right.
Right. And the other thing is by putting the point, you're reducing,
you're lowering your point.
You're lowering where the scope has to be.
Different things though too. Okay. One of the things is where the bridle that he's talking about for a chain, or what you're talking about is actually lowering the point of contact. Where did you put an eye on the lower part of your boat by the water line?
No, we don't have an eye, but we.
Okay.
But yeah, we know we've seen some people who do the eye to bring it down as well.
Right.
So the purpose, what we're describing as an eye, think of a 20-foot boat on a trailer. So you've got the eye to crank the boat up on the trailer. Well, when you've got a 47-foot boat, that's not going to happen. But if you see the eye near the water line on a larger boat, that's to lower the pulling point for your anchor rode or your anchor bridle. So that way you don't have to add that extra 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 feet of airspace above the water line.
Mm-hmm. On our website, we have a few different articles about that. And we do a really detailed description of it in our 1.5 hour anchoring video that we have. But you can go to our site and you can see some of those pictures of
the eye, pulling eye.
But also of the bridle.
Yeah.
Showing how it looks.
YouTube.
Yeah, on YouTube also. Yeah, that's right. If you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see a playlist for anchoring, and there's all kinds of anchoring videos there too.
So we've got a question from two people now, from What Yacht to Do, and then Sam also asked this, is tips about a trip line, and what is a trip line?
Okay. Trip lines are a float that you would put on your anchor, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. But a trip line, let's say you're going to anchor somewhere that's rocky or there's a lot of debris on the bottom, like anchoring in a river with a bunch of tree branches or logs on the bottom. So let's say that the water's 10 feet deep. And by the way, everybody who's listening, you want to anchor in as shallow water as possible so you don't have to let out so much anchor line. So 10 feet deep is an average water depth to anchor at low tide.
Yes.
So a trip line would be, so if it's 10 feet deep, you'd put about a 15-foot trip line on there with a jug, like a Tide soap detergent jug that's bright orange.
So it's a line that you would tie maybe onto the anchor, and the line would come straight up and float. See, there's a hole on this one for it. It would come straight up with a floating jug or a floating small fender that you can see exactly where it is underneath, where the anchor is underneath. And then if you have a problem where the anchor is stuck and it's not coming out, you can take that trip line and pull it and pull the anchor out like that. So
pull it out backwards.
Pull it out backwards. If everything else doesn't work.
So you say there's a downside to them. So what is the downside then?
Other boats could run over it.
Okay.
We tried to put our name on it. We used a Tide jug. We used a white fender floating. We did all kinds of things. And the other thing is, when you start getting into areas that have 6 and 8 foot tides, you anchored at low tide and it's 10 feet. No problem. But now it's going to be 8 more feet that you need to have on that trip line. Mm-hmm. Or else it's going to be 8 feet underwater when the tide comes up. So now you have this longer line that isn't always going to float straight. It might start falling back and go back. And if it's too long, it could get caught in your propellers. It could get caught in your stabilizers. There's all kinds of fun things that we've seen happen with people with their trip lines.
But if you're going to use a trip line, be sure to use a bright yellow floating rope. So if the tide is low, the rope is floating on top of the water, people can see that bright yellow rope.
Okay. We used the line a lot when we first started out, and we just reason to understand what kind of water bottom you're anchoring in. Is it likely that we're going to have a problem with snags? Is it likely that we're going to need that trip line? If it is, well, then we would make the effort to put it on. But if it wasn't likely, then
right. So RV Escape Pod wants to know, is there an alarm that lets you know that you've dragged anchor too far? And yes, there's a lot of them out there. There's even apps for your iPhone.
Okay. One of the things that you have to understand is if you ask us something, we're going to tell you. We're going to tell you what we think and why. So my first impression of the anchor alarms are this. They work great when you practice in a parking lot. They work terrific, telling you that you are out of your range, that you're slowly dragging. They're awesome. First of all, I don't want to be woken up in the middle of the night telling me I'm dragging. Okay, I want to do whatever I can, including anchoring early enough in the day to know that my anchor is set, it's going to reset, good holding, all that sort of stuff. But if I do need to be woken up, then I need to make sure that that anchor alarm is going to alarm very loudly next to my bed where I'm sleeping, which is something that people forget to do sometimes. They just say, well, it's loud enough, I'll hear it up on the flybridge where your GPS is, where you've set your alarm.
With your generator running and your air conditioner blowing.
Right. So you don't always hear that alarm if it happens like that. Additionally, there are a number of different alarm programs out there, we'll say. So,
apps.
Well, some of them are apps, some of them are built into. It just depends on what you buy. And they all, in theory, work great. But where are you when you're setting it? Mm-hmm. If you're doing it on a phone app, are you close to the bow of the boat when you're starting to set it? Or are you driving from, which could be 15, 20, 25 feet from where the anchor first goes down? So there's issues with that. So If you haven't,
and if you put out 150 feet of road and you set it after you've deployed 150 feet, then the game's over. You
so if you
messed
haven't
up.
figured out, we don't like to rely on that. So we do like to rely on a couple of different things besides the anchor alarm, which I won't say I won't ever use one, but I don't rely on that. You sleep in the bow of your boat, right? So if the wind starts to pick up and there starts to be a potential problem where you may drag, your burgee on the front of your boat.
Oh, we take the burgee off at night. I'm not listening to that thing all night.
It wakes you up.
Yep. And wave slap.
Wave slap.
Against the hull.
We slept in the aft part of our boat, but we had these side doors that we would leave unlatched. And when they started rattling from the wind picking up, that would wake us up right over our heads on the aft part of the boat. So different boats, you might be able to do different things to help you to see that now there's an issue that's popping up, like weather's changing or something like that. But as far as the other reason why you might drag is if the tide turned and you flipped and did the anchor reset or not. And what I would recommend for that is if you know the tide is going to change at 2 o'clock in the morning, set your alarm at 1:30. Wake up so that you get a good sleep before that. And then just wake up, make sure it reset, and then go back to sleep. But that's kind of, do you feel any differently about alarms? I've been doing a lot of the talking there.
Well, I know
just
our anchor alarm
about it and plan for the tide change.
Yeah. Our anchor alarm always reminds us that when we're using an app, it always goes off when we take the dinghy out and drive away. It's like, oh, my pocket's starting to go off because I'm carrying it around with me.
So we mainly use.
Well, let's go back and talk about the app.
Yeah, so we use apps.
Using your smartphone. Pardon?
Yeah, we use an app. We set it when we first drop the hook. And then we monitor where the boat actually is for a couple hours.
Track, so we get a circle.
It sees a track, and then we set our circle for what seems reasonable for this location, and we track it. And we are never more than an arm's length from our iPhones because they're kind of magnetically attached to our hands, so it's always with us. So much so that when we go away from the boat or paddleboard or something like that, we're getting an anchor alarm because we're taking the alarm with us.
Yep.
Do you find that when you're using the anchor alarm that it takes a lot more power from your phone?
Oh yeah, it'll drain your battery really quickly. So particularly if you're leaving it on your nightstand and stuff, leave it plugged in.
Leave it charged. But it's worked very reliably for us for the past 3 years. It's when we had that old Delta, it woke us up. I mean, if we knew weather was coming, we're usually up at the helm anyway, frightened because we're newbies then. But
another question, does your anchor drag app on your smartphone, is it cellular triangulation or is it satellite based?
It's satellite based, but sometimes if it loses its satellite look, and so you've got to make sure most of the apps have accuracy alarms that'll let you know it's lost its satellite. But yeah, there's a lot of apps out there. I haven't picked a favorite because they change. But
yeah, it's been, and number one, our ultra anchor has just been ultra. We've not had a dragging experience with it in the 2.5 years since we've had it. Especially when we're on the hard. We have never dragged while we're on the hard. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, but you've got to jack the bus up and level it out.
But no, it's our ultra anchor. We've gotten a lot of trust. Probably there's different times we've probably gotten too complacent and just haven't set an alarm. But unless there's weather coming or something like that, or we know there's going to be massive tidal currents.
Now, we do have a bunch more questions. I want to get to this quick one from Rebecca.
because we're already at an hour here.
Rebecca was shocked the little anchors you were holding up, how small they are.
Those were demo anchors.
Those are not real anchors. Don't use those other than with your toys.
Use it for your toy boat that you do your bubble bath with.
That's about it. Those are great in the bathtub. Here's a good question from Tom, who is asking, which is better, all rope, all chain, or combination?
I will go with combination, and keep in mind that we've got 3 coasts in the U.S., the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Gulf of Mexico. So our world is mostly Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean, and let's speak about south of New York City, which is the Hudson River. So I'll pick that as a border because south of the Hudson River, it's mud and sand. North of the Hudson River, it's rock. Long Island Sound, Rhode Island, Cape Cod.
And then what would you want?
So for our cruising, I like to have at least one water line of chain. So our boat was 44 feet. We had 50 feet of chain. Then we had 300 feet of rope. So we had a 350-foot road on our anchor line. And that way we did not have to use a bridle. We did not have to use a snubber. We did not have to buy 300 feet of chain. And we did not have to put 300 feet of chain in the bow of the boat to weight the bow down, because chain weighs 3 pounds per 1 foot. So that's a lot of weight.
Okay. The size that we use on our boat.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but if you were in the rocky areas, then all chain would probably be a better
use. So that would be the Pacific Ocean and north of the Hudson River. They decide to go with more chain, maybe 100 feet, 150 feet, and then rope, or 100% chain, and you would require a snubber or bridle.
But always want to attach the anchor rod, whether it's chain or line, to the boat with a line, not chain to the boat. Because if you do chain directly to the boat and hook it right into that eye, and you need to, for whatever reason, separate your boat from the anchor quickly, you're not going to be able to disconnect that. That's why you want to have at least enough rope to come out onto the deck, and then you can take your old handy knife and you can quickly cut the line and get out of Dodge if you have to. Ask Sean and Louise about that one time. They had to separate themselves from their anchor. They went back and got it. They tied a fender onto it and went back and got it. But it's one of those things where we find sometimes when we go on to boats where we're training people that they didn't know it, that their chain was tied, was attached, shackled directly to it. And they said, well, I could just get a bolt cutter and cut that. You're not going to get a bolt cutter to cut that. You're not even going to get, I know he's got.
I was a Boy Scout. This is not going to cut that, believe me. Not going to do it.
And if it's an emergency, it's an emergency. And it may not be a life or death emergency, but I don't like my boat going aground on something. So that to me would be reason enough to say, let's separate it. So just where that you're not shackled directly from the chain to the boat.
Okay. Now we got a question from Julie here. This is a really good one. Come on up. Oh, hello, Julie. So the question is, how can you tell what the bottom is like when you're on a river or somewhere where there's not obviously sand? You have X-ray vision, but the rest of us, what do we do?
That's where reading those reviews and the active captain or waterway guides can come in really handy.
And your charts. Look on the chart. It'll say sandy, rocky, muddy, ooze.
My favorite one is OZ, and that stands for ooze. That's just disgusting. But it's important to know what kind of anchor you need for that type of water bottom. And it'll say snags. It'll say rocks. It'll say shells. So you'll know what to expect. But you're right. That's where crowdsourcing really does help a lot, because people who've anchored there before you will give a 2-star instead of a 4 or a 5-star to say that the holding is terrible, because hopefully they've given you a reason.
Yeah, some people actually make it a habit of whenever the conditions allow it, they dive the anchor. They will either snorkel or put on gear and check their anchor if they have concerns at the bottom, and that's a kind of a rough thing in a lot of places.
In the Keys in the Bahamas, it's fun. In the Tennessee Tom Bigby River, or the Tennessee or Ohio or Mississippi, I would not do it.
It looks like we have Jeff Gal here.
Oh, Jeff
our
is
mutual
there.
Friend.
Okay.
Another day or two, I'm going to post a video that somebody sent us who's over in the Bahamas right now, and they said they have their anchor that they can see that it's set. It's the best time that they've ever been able to see it.
Crystal clear water.
Yeah. Yes.
I think we need to get wrapping up here.
Okay.
So. Do we have any much more questions left?
Okay. So yeah, let's ask this one. We'll find out what other questions. So, what are the techniques to get off anchor? Mike wants to know. I'm guessing this is like, how do you raise your anchor? What is the process to pull it back up?
Okay, it's actually simpler than you think. Let's use a Bruce anchor for this so everybody gets to see all of our models. So the boat's pulling like this while you're ready to weigh the anchor or raise the anchor, drive your boat forward and take in the slack so that the anchor chain or rope is vertical, and then drive across it and look, it pops out. So what you've got to do is drive across it and you'll get a mechanical advantage where you will hinge the anchor up and out of the bottom, and then you just lift it up with the anchor windlass.
So your windlass, the ship turning, is not pulling your boat to the anchor. You're driving to it. The only thing that windlass is going to do is pick up the chain and then pick up the anchor.
Right. Okay.
I think that's the end of the question.
Yeah, so that is the end of the anchoring questions, and we've actually covered an entire hour here, and and our one camera is timed out. Had that happen there, so we're on the webcam, the smaller camera now. So I think this is a good excuse to wrap it up here, and thank you guys so much for joining us.
Yep. And if you're interested in a private one-on-one session with Captain Chris, go email them to go look at the description of this video. And you can email them and sign up for a free session. They'll be taking, you guys said the first 10, right?
Yep, first 10.
Awesome.
And if you didn't win, we'll still send you some things that you can go to that you can learn an awful lot about anchoring and other things.
Yeah, cool. They have some great free resources on their website. Go to askcaptainchris.com. You also have anchoringtips.com, if I remember. I have all the links down in the description with a bunch of awesome content. Get on their newsletter. They're constantly putting out great stuff. Chris has a habit of filming everything he sees about boats and making a video about it. It's fantastic. You'll learn so much from these guys. And then once COVID-19 is allowing it, sign up for one of their in-person classes or go to one of their seminars at many of the boat shows that they go to.
Thanks so much for hosting this. I know it was your first time hosting. You've been on many. In fact, we saw one of the RVers today.
Oh, that's right. We're back on Discovery Channel today.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is our first time doing a live Skype. We've done all our other interviews have been in person, and I think we'll get better at this, but we'll definitely do it again. And thank you guys for being our first. So we'll now, and thank you everyone here. There's been a lot of great comments and stuff, and much appreciate that. We're now going to give you our little farewell video loop of some of our favorite anchoring spots here. So here that.
Thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys. We'll see everyone else next time. We're going to try to do more lives.
Virtual hugs.
Bye-bye.